Welcome to the Engage with Oceans podcast. When we listen to the debate around the future of the oceans, everyone seems invested in something. Money, profit, ecology, welfare, biodiversity, food security. The list goes on. So we thought we'd look at investing in our oceans in the boldest sense. To help us, we're joined by Amy Novogratz from the Aqua-Spark Investment House and by Karan Sawhneys of the UN Global Compact. Welcome both. Amy, aquaculture is the fastest growing food sector in the world. That suggests big money is moving into the industry. Is that what you're seeing?
Well, fortunately, it is starting to move into the industry. But, 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, there was very little outside investment going into aquaculture. But now that people are realizing how sustainable aquaculture can be and that it can be a solution for both the oceans and food security, real investment is starting to step up. So, yes.
Where's the money coming from?
It's really just starting to enter this space, but we're seeing VCs and investment funds get kind of more and more enthusiastic about what aquaculture can deliver. But it's really just starting. I mean, we're seeing a lot of DFIs on the sidelines and other groups on the sidelines watching this space. And hopefully we're going to have a real track record in aquaculture investing soon, and people are going to kind of see that transformation actually is happening and what the investment opportunity is, and that will catalyze more investment into the space.
What's drawing them in? What makes it an attractive investment? We all talk sustainability, don't we? But what makes it an attractive investment?
I think that there's more and more attention on this growing population, growing middle class, need to produce more protein in a sustainable way. There's more attention on the ocean finally, thankfully, and the need to do it in balance with the planet in general. And I think finally people are starting to see the potential of aquaculture, that it can be really resource efficient. It can be done with very little land and water. It can be done in a really clean way without antibiotics, and it really is going to take investment in that kind of that right kind of intelligent, responsible aquaculture, and the potential is just becoming clearer.
Karan, can I ask you? I mean, you spend your time at the Global Compact, bringing businesses and banks and politicians together. What do you see as the driver for money moving in this way?
Well, my focus is mainly on the United Nations Global Compact Network in Norway, where, of course, the ocean is a key driver of the economy. And we can quite clearly see that, as Amy mentioned, there is increased attention and focus on the oceans. People and companies are realizing the dependence and the importance of maintaining sustainable oceans. And in the conversations that we have with our partners and our members, this is a key topic that's always brought up. What can we do? How can we do more? And what is needed? That being said, it's not an easy question to answer. There are a lot of complexities involved, as you mentioned in the introduction as well. But that is essentially the driving factor, at least in the Global Compact here, which is a sustainability network for businesses. It is the business case for sustainable oceans. And that's a lot what we focus on.
Is there much agreement about the opportunities and the problems? Does everybody arrive at the same space? Or are they all approaching it from different directions?
Well, that's definitely a very interesting question, because the companies that we brought together in the National Ocean Platform in the Norway network comprises of big industries, research organizations, and NGOs as well. And of course, the main objective is to develop solutions, but sometimes the problem we face is defining the problem. And that can be more challenging than it seems. And the reason is that different companies and different actors have different perspectives. We talk a lot about, for example, plastic pollution in the ocean. And some participants will feel that plastic should be removed from the ocean and we need to do more. Others will feel we need to prevent it from getting there. And some will even say we need to talk to manufacturers. They should change their process of manufacturing. All have very valid points. All have very different perspectives. But the challenge sometimes is finding that commonality and finding that common ground. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? So to answer your question, it is challenging sometimes to identify the problem.
I totally agreed. But Ken, would you say that we've made great progress there? I mean, if you look at kind of 10 years ago versus now, there's much more alignment on what we're trying to achieve. How we get there is that we see different kind of roadmaps sometimes. But I think where we can take this and groups really working together toward that vision is happening in a way that I've never really seen in sectors beforehand.
I completely agree with that. I think the conversation is progressing extremely quickly. But it's also good to have different perspectives because companies see the other side of the story. They see sometimes what not necessarily their competitors, but other actors in the ocean sector, how they see the problem. So I think having that difference of opinion is really good. It makes much more interesting conversation, but it sort of helps create a more broader picture to what are the issues affecting this very complex ecosystem that is the oceans. But I completely agree that it is something that is of genuine interest. And there is a passion in trying to solve this problem. So I completely agree with you, Amy.
We are all sitting here, aren't we, in different bits of Europe. Is this conversation and this sort of solution finding going on globally, do you think? Or are we slightly fooling ourselves that we sit here in Western Europe and have these conversations while the perspectives might look a little bit different in other parts of the world? Do you see it, Karan, do you see it as an international conversation?
Well, the conversation that we have here is largely local, focusing on the nationals problem over here. I wish I had a more clear answer to that question, but I mean, I'm from Asia, and I come from a town where I live 15 minutes from the ocean, but I've never swum in the sea because it's so polluted. It's not genuinely a topic of conversation over there, as much as it is here in Western Europe. So I'm not sure exactly the conversations going on. I hope it's progressing in Asia as well, and I'm sure it's heading in the right direction.
Amy,
so I was going to say we invest all over the world, and I'd say actually when it comes to aquaculture, Europe's lagging behind a bit. South Asia is really taking the lead around kind of what's possible and really looking at sustainable aquaculture as an incredible investment opportunity.
I'm prompted then to ask about rules and regulations. Amy, do investors welcome a regulated sort of investment sector, or do they prefer to be sort of left to their own devices and allow the market to take its direction?
We're highly regulated, and investing in private companies, there are regulations as well. But as far as real guidelines around like ESG guidelines or what is sustainable aquaculture, I know a lot of groups are working on that. I mean, that goes back kind of to the earlier discussion. And there are a lot of people working on kind of what sustainability around, resilient food systems actually means. And I think there is definitely a desire to have those kind of set and agreed on globally.
Karan, what's the role of the international community then? You're working for the UN. What do you think organizations like the UN should be doing? You're holding conversations with different bits of the sector and bringing them together. Do you think there's an overarching role for international bodies like the UN?
I definitely think there's an important role that bodies like the UN can play, or specifically the UN Global Compact. But we are an NGO, so we're limited in how much we can impact regulation. But I think the role that organizations like the UNGC can play is in the convening power that it has in bringing these companies to the table to have these conversations and sort of promoting and facilitating pre-competitive collaboration. Because this is a problem that can't be solved by one company alone. Most companies know that. But I think the role that we play is bringing them together to identify these problems as a group. As the UNGC, we are not the experts, but the people working for these companies are. They are the ones that see these problems day in and day out, the impact for it, and possibly the solutions as well. So I think the role that an organization like UNGC can have is bringing these companies to the table together.
Amy, do you see a role for international organizations like the UN? Do you think they should be doing more?
I was going to say, I think when you talk about kind of solving the challenge around really building a global resilient food system that works within the kind of the boundaries of our Earth, it's imperative that you bring all different types of stakeholders to the table. So the convening powers, but also even in a more proactive way, what are we asking everybody to sign up for? What are the commitments that we're working toward and continuing to kind of to push and prod, that I think, yes, we need more and more kind of agreement on what it is we're trying to do and how we want to get there. But I think there's urgency at stake as well. And getting those involved to kind of commit to act, but also encouraging others to support this movement. I mean, if you look at just aquaculture as one sector in the blue economy, we need an immense amount of capital to actually develop the plans that everyone is making. So to be a loudspeaker as well.
Karan, you spend a lot of time talking to big banks and to politicians. I appreciate you doing it from the Norwegian perspective. But are they picking up on the sort of things that Amy is saying? Are they, recognizing a big agenda and moving in their own spheres in terms of financing investment, but also as far as government is concerned, in making sure that they're responsible actors in the growth of the blue economy? Do you see that happening?
Well, unfortunately, I don't spend much time talking to politicians, but from the finance angle, in my limited experience, I definitely feel there is a greater drive towards investing in these sort of solutions. Of course, in Norway, it is specifically aquaculture, which is quite different than what's happening in Asia. It's more in terms of salmon farming over here. But generally, in technologies that can help the blue economy, there is a tremendous amount of incentives provided by the government organizations over here to subsidize investments in these technologies. Specifically, we see that a lot in the shipping sector, as well as the aquaculture sector. There are more and more incentives coming on the table, which companies can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, as somebody who invests in the sector, can you give me a sense of, as you approach a new investment opportunity, what sort of questions are being asked now in 2021 by an investor? It's not obviously purely financial. So can you give me a sense of how you would approach a new opportunity?
Yes, but if you don't mind, I'm also going to quickly remark on the question beforehand, because we are seeing big banks and other groups stepping up. And again, it's really welcome and it's time. But most of them are also really looking at companies that have already proven them space. And that's actually where we don't need as much investment. If you look at what's happening with just aquaculture specifically, it's really this exciting moment of kind of an entrepreneur, like a startup-based revolution that's happening. And we need to get kind of more in and more capital into those startups that have the potential to be truly transformative. And a lot of our more institutional partners are only interested in, companies that check the exact boxes, or funds that check those exact boxes. But this is a time to rethink how we deploy capital, how we invest in real solutions. And so perhaps your kind of traditional forms aren't going to work or be as irrelevant. And so I do think we need some more, like you see a lot of innovation happening in the kind of the startup scene and within the industry. We're seeing less innovation coming from the capital providers, to be honest. And that needs to change. And now I forgot your question. Oh, what we look at. So
give me a sense of how you approach as an investor.
So with aquaculture, there are a number of challenges that we prioritize. And the first thing we look at is, what is this company solving? What specifically? We want focus, and we want to know that they are going to move the needle when it comes to sustainability. So once that is clear to us, we look at who the team is. We want to work with a team that's listening, that's open, that's collaborative, that's completely dedicated to that mission, that's going to get in there and work within the industry and not just provide a solution for the sake of the solution. And then we look at who the partners are, who the potential partners are, where there's going to be support on the ground or within the industry to get lift off here. We think the way to really transform the industry is to make sure that the business case is similar to today's kind of traditional industry business case. So we do look for returns, but actually aquaculture is a place where there's real potential for good returns by doing something that's truly sustainable.
Okay, can I ask both of you a question? You might feel this is a little unfair, so say if it's unfair. But in the new blue economy that is developing, I do hear voices that say that some people are being left behind, that some portions of society as aquaculture grows and takes different forms, are finding that they're not taking part in the economy. If you're a very small fisherman in certain parts of the world, you might be displaced by aquaculture. Does that form any part of your thinking? Amy first.
I mean, so, again, we're just kind of in the early days, but if you look at our model, like we're invested in a tilapia production operation in Mozambique on a lake that had a ton of Kapenta fishermen. The lake has dried up. There are no fish left. And so now you have a lot of out of work Kapenta fishermen. One of our kind of priorities around investing in this operation was an outgrower program to really catalyze a regional aquaculture industry. So we see a real role for fisher people that are out of work by getting into aquaculture. But I actually can't speak to that question in a way that's really going to give a fair, it's just really a siloed perspective.
As I hear you speak, it's just interesting. Karan, you'll probably find it's a bit unfair as well, really, because you're sitting in Norway, where the industry is pretty invested and society is invested in the industry. But do you sense, as you organise these conversations between banks and businesses, that they are saying the same sort of things that Amy is saying, that actually it's pretty high-minded, that you're working with the oceans and you're trying to invest and do good at the same time, which isn't always very easy when you're talking about business and investing?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do feel a lot of people get left behind. I think there's too much of focus on returns rather than impact. And coming to Amy's point, a tilapia farm in Asia would probably have much more of an impact in terms of feeding the economy, but less of an impact in terms of returns. And again, it would be interesting to see where is the money flowing. If the money is saying that it's going towards making an impact, these are the investments, these startups, the aquaculture in developing countries, which can make more of an impact, but again, may not give you the same return. So I feel there is a disparity over there. That mindset, if it's going to change, is a difficult question to answer. I hope it does. But these sort of companies and sort of new technologies can get left behind.
Amy, so I didn't mean to say that I don't see the same returns. I mean, if you look at this tilapia operation, we're expecting, I mean, I don't know what it's not going to be the same returns as a tech company, but farming operation, there's a huge demand for well-produced protein there.
Yes.
It's probably a longer road to get there, but we actually see real potential for commercial returns in, for instance, tilapia production in emerging economies.
Do you see?
No, definitely. I'm sure these are profitable ventures. I just meant that they may not get as much attention as they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you're both engaged with the blue economy. Where do you think our oceans are going to be in, what shall we say, 50 years from now? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Or do you have to be professionally optimistic? Amy, you first.
I mean, I'm surrounded in this kind of movement of people that want to build differently, that want to take into consideration the ocean's health and power and what it gives to the earth. So professionally, I am really optimistic, but we have to do a lot more than we're doing. And it's exciting that there's this startup-led initiative, but we also need the big players to understand that they have to take an active role in it as well and demand more from them as well.
Karan, are you?
So a lot of work to be done, but I am optimistic.
Karan, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I'm optimistic. I like to always try and be optimistic. I think conversations are not enough, but it's a start. I do believe in the power of technology and organizations like Aqua-Spark in pushing this forward. I also agree with Amy that it's not enough for big companies to make a difference. It's a big problem that needs the entire business ecosystem to contribute. Financial players, startups, innovators, research organizations. But getting everyone together is a challenge, but something that can be done. So overall, I'm optimistic and it's heading in the right direction. But still a lot of work to be done as well.
But it's also exciting, right? That we all get to be around the table and figure this out together, because that couldn't have happened 10 years ago. Now we have the technology to do it.